It was just another rainy afternoon at the small roadside diner. The kind where people stop for coffee, warm soup, or to take shelter from bad weather. The waitress had been working all morning, moving from one table to another, filling mugs, taking orders, and smiling through her tiredness. She had seen all kinds of customers, truck drivers, old couples, travelers passing through, but today, something caught her eye. In the far corner of the diner, at table 9, sat a little boy. He was small, maybe 6 or 7, with big eyes and messy hair that looked like he had been out in the rain. His clothes were clean, but they looked like they had been worn too long without care. His shoulders were hunched, and he stared down. At the table, where a plate of pancakes sat untouched, the waitress paused. She hadn't seen him come in. He wasn't with anyone. That was strange. Children didn't come to diners alone. She walked over slowly, with a gentle smile, and asked, "Hey there, sweetheart. You okay?" The boy didn't look up. He whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "I'm just waiting for my dad." His voice was soft, tired, like he had said it many times before. She didn't want to scare him or make him feel worse, so she just nodded. "All right," she said kindly. "Let me know if you need anything, okay?" He nodded once, still not touching the food in front of him. Time passed. More customers came in and out. Some people glanced at the boy, confused or curious, but no one said anything. The waitress checked on him every few minutes. She noticed his hands were shaking a little. Maybe from the cold. Maybe from something else. After an hour, the boy was still there, still alone, still waiting. The waitress couldn't take it anymore. She brought over a mug of warm milk and a small plate with a slice of pineapple, still warm from the oven. She placed them in front of him without saying a word, then sat down at the edge of the booth across from him. The boy looked at the pie, then at her. "I don't have money," he said quietly. She smiled. "It's on me. Just eat a little. You'll feel better." He stared at her for a moment, then picked up the fork and took a small bite, then another and another. His eyes didn't sparkle, but the way he relaxed just a little, she noticed it. He needed this moment. "Do you want to play a game?" she asked softly. He blinked. "I don't know any. That's okay. I'll teach you. It's called tic-tac-toe." She grabbed a napkin and drew the simple grid with her pen. She handed him the pen and said, "You be X, I'll be O." The boy hesitated, then took the pen in his little fingers and marked the first X. They played 3 rounds. He won one. She let him. For a few moments, the rain outside didn't matter. Her aching feet didn't matter. His silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. The boy didn't say much. But when she stood up to check on another table, he said something that made her heart clench. "Thank you for not making me leave." She turned back and smiled. "You're safe here, okay?" He nodded again, this time a little quicker. She didn't know what had happened to him. Didn't know where his parents were, or why he was sitting alone in a small diner in the middle of a storm. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he wasn't invisible. Someone saw him. Someone cared. She brought him a blanket from the back room and placed it around his shoulders. He looked surprised, like no one had done something like that in a long time. Maybe ever. The hours passed. Her shift was almost over. Still, no one came for the boy. The bell above. The door rang as another customer entered. But the boy didn't react. The waitress stood behind the counter, watching, worrying, and wondering who this little child was, and why no one had come looking for him. What she didn't know was that the person about to walk through that door would change her life forever, and the boy she just gave pie and a blanket to, he wasn't just any boy. He was someone very, very important. But she only saw a child who needed kindness, and that was enough for her. The rain was still falling, making soft tapping sounds on the windows of the diner. The little boy had finished his pie, but he hadn't moved from his seat. The blanket was wrapped around his shoulders, and the warm milk was half gone. He sat quietly, staring out the window now, eyes watching the road like he was still hoping someone would come. The waitress refilled a few coffee mugs and cleared off another table, but her eyes kept going back to the boy. He had barely spoken, but something about him stayed with her. He looked so alone, like he was carrying a heavy weight no child should carry. She came back to him with a small smile and another napkin. This time, she drew a little cartoona silly face with big eyes and a crooked grin. The boy gave the tiniest smile. It was quick, almost invisible, but she saw it. Her heart warmed a little. It was the first real reaction from him all day. "Do you want to tell me your name?" she asked gently. The boy hesitated. I don't know if I should." "That's okay," she said. "You don't have to. Just thought maybe you wanted someone to talk to." He didn't answer, but he didn't push her away either. That was enough for now. A couple walked in and sat near the front. The waitress went to take their order, but before she did, she looked at the boy again. He was hugging the blanket now, his head resting on the side of the booth. He looked tired. Not just sleepy, but tired in the way people look when they've been through something too big for them. Back at the counter, one of the regulars, an older man, leaned in and asked quietly, "That your nephew or something?" She shook her head. "No, he just came in like that. Said he's waiting for his dad." The man raised an eyebrow. "You call the police?" She hesitated. "Not yet. I didn't want to scare him. Could be dangerous, letting a kid sit alone like that," the man said kindly. "But I get it. Poor little guy looks heartbroken." She nodded. Her instincts told her the boy wasn't running from trouble. He looked more like he was waiting for someone who didn't show up. Just then, the bell above the door rang again. The waitress looked up, expecting maybe another customer. But what she saw made her stop. A man stepped inside, tall and serious looking. He wore a dark coat, and his shoes were polished, even though the streets were wet. His eyes searched the diner quickly, and then they locked onto the little boy in the corner. He rushed over in long strides, kneeling down beside the booth. "There you are," he said, pulling the boy into his arms. "I was so scared." The boy didn't cry. He just held onto the man tightly. The waitress stood still, unsure of what to do. Then the man looked up at her. "Are you the one who watched him?" She nodded slowly. "He's been missing since morning," the man said, his voice low but filled with emotion. "I've had people searching all over town." The waitress felt a sudden wave of relief, but also confusion. "He said he was waiting for his dad." The man nodded. "That's me. I'm his father." The boy pulled back just enough to whisper something in the man's ear. The man turned to the waitress again, eyes softer now. "He said you were kind. That you gave him pie and a blanket. I didn't know what else to do," she said quietly. The man stood up and reached into his coat pocket. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. She blinked. "No, sir." He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. She read the name and froze. She had seen that name before, on magazine covers, on TV interviews. He was one of the richest men in the country. A man who owned a company worth more money than she could even imagine. She looked back at the boy, who was now clinging to his father's hand. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. The man looked at her for a long moment. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "You saw my son when others didn't. You didn't ask for anything. You just helped. That means everything to me." Then he looked down at his son and asked, "Ready to go?" The boy looked up at the waitress. "Can I say bye?" She knelt down and opened her arms. He hugged her tightly, just for a second. Then he turned and walked out with his father. The door closed behind them, and the diner felt quiet again. But something inside her had changed. She didn't know what the future held. She just knew that one small act of kindness had somehow become the biggest moment of her life. The rain had finally stopped, But the waitress couldn't stop thinking about the little boy. Even after he left with his father, his quiet face and tired eyes stayed with her. She wiped the same table twice without realizing it. Her co-worker asked if she was okay, and she just nodded. But deep down, something inside her felt heavy, like the moment wasn't over yet. She went to the counter and picked up the business card the man had left. His name was printed in clean, bold letters. She remembered hearing it before. News stories, business shows, headlines about big companies and new inventions. But nothing about him in real life had felt flashy or cold. In that diner he was just a worried father who had found his son. Her shift ended a little later. As she walked home, she kept replaying the boy's words in her head. "Thank you for not making me leave." She had no idea how long he'd been wandering alone. What if he hadn't come into her diner? What if she'd been too busy to notice him? The next day, things returned to normal, or at least they tried to. Customers filled booths. Coffee was poured, orders were taken. But she kept glancing the door, half expecting the boy to return. He didn't single quotes days passed. She tried to let it go. Life didn't stop for emotional moments, especially not for people like her. She had bills to pay and rent coming due. Her shoes were wearing thin, and her apron had another small tear in it. She told herself that what she did for the boy was simple. It wasn't a big deal. Anyone would have done the same, but a part of her wished she had asked his name. Then, on a bright Saturday morning, just as she was refilling the sugar jars at the counter, a black car pulled up outside. It wasn't just any car. It was long, sleek, and way too expensive to belong in their quiet little town. She froze. The door opened, and the same man stepped out. He was dressed sharp again, but this time he wasn't alone. The little boy was with him, holding his hand. He looked cleaner, more rested, but still had the same gentle eyes. They walked into the diner like they belonged there. People turned to look. Conversations stopped. The waitress stood behind the counter, stunned. She didn't know if she should smile or hide. But then the boy saw her, and his face lit up. He pulled away from his father and ran to the counter. "You're here," he said with a grin. She leaned down, surprised by his energy. "Of course I'm here. I work here, remember?" The boy nodded. "I wanted to come back and see you." By then, the man had reached the counter. He looked at her and smiled, an honest, warm smile that didn't come from money or power. It came from gratitude. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "He's been asking to visit since that day." She shook her head. "No, not at all. It's good to see him happy." The man gestured toward an empty booth. "Can we sit?" She led them to the same table, the one the boy had sat at alone. The waitress brought them coffee and orange juice. She didn't ask for payment. She just wanted to understand why they were here. After a moment, the man looked at her and said, "I owe you more than just a thank you." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I was just doing my job." He leaned forward. "You did more than that. You gave my son safety when he needed it. He's been through a lot since. His mother passed. That day, I was in meetings. I didn't even know he had left the hotel. My staff found him missing, and I was terrified. But he came here, to you, and you made him feel like someone cared." The waitress didn't know what to say. Her eyes started to burn, but she held back the tears. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I just thought he was waiting for someone who forgot him." "He thought the same," the man said gently. "But you gave him hope. He still talks about your pie." The boy nodded quickly. "It was the best," she chuckled softly. "I'll make you another slice." The man pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. "What's this?" She asked. "An invitation," he said, "to come work with us. I run a foundation that supports children going through hard times. We need people who care. People like you." She stared at the paper. It didn't seem real. You want me to leave the diner? She asked, confused. I want you to do what you're already doing, he said, but on a bigger scale. She looked at the boy again. He was smiling now, relaxed, joyful. Something inside her whispered. Maybe this was why the boy had come to her that day. Maybe it wasn't just about helping him. Maybe it was about what came next. Asterisk. She held the folded paper in her hands for a long time after they left. The little boy had hugged her again before getting back in the car. The man, his father, had thanked her once more and said he hoped she'd think about the offer, but she hadn't said yes. She hadn't said no either. She had just stood there, frozen, her fingers gripping the paper, her mind spinning faster than her heart could keep up. That night, she sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the invitation under the dull light of her kitchen bulb. It was all typed neatly. A job offer, real, official, with her name on it. It promised better pay than she ever imagined, housing assistance, and even a chance to help shape programs for kids who'd gone through pain or loss. But still, a voice inside her kept asking, why me? She didn't have a fancy degree. She didn't grow up with money or connections. She was just a waitress. She didn't even finish college. Most days, she barely made enough in tips to cover her bills. She had no big dreams left, just simple ones. Like being able to buy new shoes without guilt, or not having to choose between rent and groceries. But maybe, just maybe, helping that little boy had opened something inside her again. Something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She thought about that rainy day, how the boy had looked so lost. How she hadn't done anything grand, just small things. A slice of pie, a blanket, a quiet game. But maybe kindness didn't have to be loud. Maybe it just had to be real. The next morning, she stood in front of the diner again. She opened her locker, put on her apron, poured the coffee. But something felt different now. Every sound felt sharper. Every moment heavier. Not bad, but like the air itself was asking her to choose. Around noon, her manager noticed her looking distant. He asked if she was okay. She smiled weakly and said she was fine. But inside, she wasn't sure what fine meant anymore. That afternoon, the door of the diner opened again, and this time, it wasn't the little boy or his father. It was a woman in a gray suit, holding a folder and looking slightly out of place among the booths and the smell of hash browns. She walked up to the counter and asked, "Are you the one who helped Mr. Weller's son?" The waitress blinked. Yes, I think so," the woman smiled. "I'm with the Weller Foundation. Mr. Weller asked me to follow up with you. He said no pressure, but he hopes you'll come in for a tour." "A tour?" the waitress asked. Confused, "Yes," the woman said kindly. "Just to see where you'd be working. You don't have to accept anything today. He just wants you to see it for yourself." The waitress hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, when?" "Tomorrow." "He'll send a car. Just bring yourself." That night, she didn't sleep much. She kept picturing the little boy's face. His sad eyes the first time. His smile the second time. She woke early, dressed in her cleanest clothes, and stood outside waiting. At exactly 10 a.m., a black car pulled up. The same driver as before smiled and opened the door. The ride was quiet. She kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. When they reached the foundation building, she was speechless. It was bright, full of color and open space. Children were painting, building puzzles, laughing. Volunteers were helping them with activities, reading stories, playing soft music in the background. It didn't feel like a big company. It felt like a place made of hope. The man was waiting for her in his office. He greeted her with warmth, not formality. "I wanted you to see it for yourself," he said. She looked around, then met his eyes. "It's beautiful," he nodded. "I built it in memory of my wife. She always said, children don't need saving, they need seeing. You saw my son when no one else did." She looked down. "I'm not sure I belong in a place like this." He walked closer. You already do. You were made for this. You have something that can't be taught." She stayed silent for a while. Then she asked, "Can I meet some of the kids?" He smiled. "Of course." She spent the next hour sitting on the floor with children, helping one with crayons, listening to another talk about their pet. She didn't realize she was smiling until one little girl tugged her sleeve and said, "You're nice." And in that moment, she felt it, not fear, not doubt, but belonging. Maybe life wasn't just about surviving. Maybe it was about seeing who needed you and choosing to show up. The next morning, she stood at the same bus stop she used to take every day to the diner. But this time, she wasn't wearing her apron. She wasn't carrying her notepad or extra pens. Instead, she clutched a small canvas bag with a few personal items, a light lunch, and a heart full of nervous hope. She had accepted the offer, not because of the money, or the office, or the nice car that picked her up, but because something had shifted deep inside her. She had been seen, and more importantly, she had seen someone else, a child in need. And it had reminded her who she was beneath all the struggle. Someone who cared. When she walked through the doors of the foundation, she wasn't sure what her role would look like. She expected to be sorting files, handing out snacks, maybe reading to a few children, but the director greeted her with a hug and said, "Mr. Weller wanted me to tell you personally. The kids will be lucky to have you here." She smiled, a little overwhelmed, but grateful. As the day went on, she found herself doing what came naturally, listening, helping, smiling at a shy child who wouldn't speak, sitting beside a boy drawing a broken heart, making silly faces to cheer up a girl who missed her mom. She didn't have to try hard. She just had to be real. And that was enough. Later that afternoon, as she sat in the garden space behind the center with a few children playing nearby, the black car returned. She stood up as the boy ran toward her, arms wide. "You're here," he shouted. She bent down and caught him in a warm hug. "I told you I'd visit," he said proudly. His father followed behind, dressed less formally this time, no tie, just a soft sweater and kind eyes. "I didn't tell him you'd be working here," he said with a chuckle. He wanted it to be a surprise. "Well," she smiled, "he surprised me too." The boy grabbed her hand and said, "I'm glad you're here. It feels better when you are." His words melted something inside her. It wasn't just a job now, it was something more. A place where kindness mattered. A place where broken hearts found soft landings. Mr. Weller sat beside her on the bench as the children ran ahead. "I hope we didn't push you," he said gently. "I just kept thinking, if someone like you could care for a child with nothing in return, imagine what you could do with support behind you." She nodded. "I've lived most of my life thinking people like me were just background noise. Just working, surviving, doing what we can. I didn't think anyone would ever notice someone like me." He looked at her, his voice calm but sincere. "Sometimes, the people who go unnoticed are the ones holding the whole world together. You held my son together when I couldn't. That's not small." She looked at the kids. They need more than food and games. They need to know someone sees them, really sees them. He smiled. "That's why I knew you were the right person." The boy came running back and climbed up beside her. "Can I stay here tomorrow too?" He asked his dad. "If she's here," the man said, "then yes." She laughed softly. "I'll be here." That night, as she walked home, she passed by the old diner. It was lit up inside. The bell on the door jingled as someone walked in. She stood across the street for a moment, just watching. She had loved that place. It had fed her when nothing else had. It had taught her patience, kindness, and how to spot the quiet pain behind tired eyes. But now she had stepped into something new, not because she had planned it, but because one little boy had walked into her life, hungry for more than just food. Because she chose to sit down, offer him pie, and stay a little longer. That one moment, one simple act, had changed everything. Weeks later, she received a letter in the mail. Inside was a thank you card, written in shaky, childlike handwriting. It said, "Thank you for not walking past me. You made me feel safe. I hope you stay with us forever." No signature, but she knew exactly who it was from, and she kept that letter tucked in her wallet, close to her heart, every single day, because it reminded her of the truth she now believed. Even the smallest kindness can echo for a lifetime.